I was a terrible soldier in the beginning of my career, but meeting him and seeing him having his pants creased and his boots shined, and he's walking around looking good made me. I'm like, I need to be that guy, and I need to be friends with that guy because that's what I want. I want to look good. I want people to go, that guy's a soldier. He's a super soldier. Look at him. He had that effect on people, on all of us. He would walk into a room and now my pants are creased and my uniform looks crisp in combat. My boots are shined. I didn't have that before. And this guy was able to transform me into basically a man, showing me without being a father figure, just a brother. It's like, hey, dude, your uniform looks like crap. Square that away, dude. That kind of stuff. We were both sergeants on 2 different fire teams. We were providing security for a meeting that was supposed to happen with the elders of the of the of the village, for lack of a better term that I can think of. And he got shot by a sniper through the chest, into the lung, out the lung, and through his radio. I was down with security on the bottom, and he was on top of a building. So I actually had to, at the request of the lieutenant, because hearing my friend getting shot on the radio, I turned into like, what's going on? What's going on? Somebody give me some kind of intel. So it became more of a problem because I'm on the radio, flapping my gums. So he's like, Sergeant Cueva, just go up there and find out what's going on. So we went up there, and it's a hard thing to see, somebody that you grew up with. So his daughter, his wife, and he's on the ground and he's bleeding and he's dying. And there's nothing I can do because I'm not a medic. I have basic medical training, but nothing to that advanced level that needs to happen to help him. Giving him an IV when he didn't really need one because it was a gunshot wound, not but we're doing what we know, at a basic infantry level of medical service. Freaking out because I can't help him. I know that the bullet that he just took is going to take his life, and there's nothing I can do. There's no magic button that I can push. I wish now I knew what I know now I could have, but this is after the fact, and that's me like trying to bury, the pain that I'm dealing with by learning what to do in this situation. Putting him in a helicopter and watching the helicopter go off. And then in my head, it's like, why did he have to die? Why for this? Am I now in a position to where I have to look at his wife in the eyes, look at his daughter in the eyes, and tell them I'm sorry that I couldn't bring him home? And they're 2 wonderful people. They really are. And that's got to be much more tougher for them, than it is for me. But my pain is different because you're watching, you see it happen. You watch your friend just slowly die in front of your eyes, and there's nothing you can do. And then for what? What are we doing here? What are we doing on this building? If they don't want us here, we don't want to be here. So why are we here? And I just lost a friend, like a good friend. We drank beers, played Madden together, played video games together, talked bullshit together, size each other up all the time. It's just one instant that now that's gone. And there's so much anger and frustration inside that it becomes like you're drowning in pain. And you can't really tell people that. How do I explain that to my wife? And how do I explain that to my kids? My daughter, she was very little at the time. And coming home, she knew dad was different. coming home, and I've never been the same since war. I was a happy person, happy-go-lucky, telling jokes all the time, and now I'm serious, and now I'm sad, and now I'm angry, and now like I won't talk for hours, or I won't say a thing. I'll sit and be alone in a room, and everyone's like, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" Well, I watched my friend die. I was blown up 4 or 5 times in an explosion. I've seen hideous things done to people in front of my eyes, and that's a lot to carry with you, and that's a lot to see. And if you could see what I'm seeing or feel what I'm feeling, then you'd understand. But it's hard. It makes things very difficult too. With all that weight, with everything that you carry on, you're stuck with the reasoning of why were we in Iraq in the first place. I have to carry this war with me for the rest of my life. For nothing. It was for nothing. For me, it was for nothing. We didn't find weapons of mass destruction. We didn't square away that government. We gave them a chance for democracy, and where's it now? After DuPlantier was killed, we went from where we were at in the green, near Falcon. We drove to the Green Zone. So he got airlifted from where we were at to the Green Zone Hospital, to where he eventually died. Us as a unit, we're gonna meet him there because he's gonna survive, but we need to be there for when he wakes up. So we all got in our trucks and we hauled down there. It wasn't that far, maybe I want to say like 20-minute, 30-minute drive. Get up into the hospital area, and we're greeted by the doctor who let us know that he had passed. So they brought our leadership in with myself and a few other guys from the unit in to say our goodbyes. So we walk into the morgue, and there is my friend, dead. We had just came back from leave shortly before that. My son was born. So I got leave to go be there for my son being born, and he came so he could see his family. And, we traveled together, and, we came back together, and there's a level of excitement because, I had a baby boy, and, he was mending the fences with his wife, and they were happy. And all of those thoughts are going through my head as I'm staring at my friend, lifeless on this gurney bed. And, we start to walk out, and I'm just a mess, physically, emotionally drained. And we're in the Green Zone, so there's plenty of people just walking around, and this Iraqi man just happens to walk by, looks over at me, and just kind of smiles. And the level of hate that went through me, I'm not sure if I've ever experienced that, and I hope to never experience that again. But I reached out to strangle him. I was going to kill him with my bare hands. I wanted to rip his face off, and I wanted to break his neck, and I just wanted to kill him because he was an Iraqi and they killed my friend. Luckily, I had an entire squad there with me, and they were able to hold me down. And it took a lot of them, because that's just rage. That's pure rage. That you have somebody that you love, and they die, and that person in my head was the one who pulled that trigger. So I needed to end him, and I'm gonna do it with my bare hands, because I needed the satisfaction of just ripping this man to shreds with my bare hands. They grabbed me, and it took almost every single one of them to get me to not kill this man. And they had me on the ground, and I'm just throwing dudes off of me and just trying to get at this guy who was just probably out for a walk, who may be going to the store, or maybe, he's just, I don't know, but he did nothing. He did nothing to me. He did nothing to Arnold. He just was walking by. And it's an easy thing to do because that's a lot of anger. And if it had my squad had not been there, that man, I would have ripped him to shreds. I'd have killed him right there. Our unit had a lot of interactions with the Iraqi people. There was kids who, were wallowing in feces and, looking for food, and they didn't have anything, very poor, very poor. And when they saw the American soldier, they'd run up, Mister, chocolate, chocolate, and we'd give them some MREs or some water, help them out. Or if somebody was injured and they needed some medical assistance, and we're there to help them out, when, a certain group of individuals kidnaps somebody and cuts their heads off and leaves them inside a mosque, then we're there to go fight that. So there was a portion of people that are like, yeah, these Americans, they're good. But in my opinion, as soon as we drove away, they're like, these Americans are bad. We don't like them. We don't want them here. They're happy that we're there because obviously you have a giant dude and these helmets and guns, and they're gonna be like, hey dude, don't shoot me, I'm cool with you. But that's not, in my opinion, like, that's just a facade, and it's just them doing that because I would do the same thing. If somebody came and they had giant tanks driving around, of course I'm gonna be nice to them and then flip them off as they drive away, that kind of thing. But the amount of insurgency that was going on, that's hard to believe that they wanted us there. There's so many IEDs getting blown up on us on a daily basis. So it wasn't just, every other week somebody would go. I mean, to plant an IED is a task. You have to dig a hole. You have to make sure, it can't be seen. And then you have to go however many feet or area away so that when the soldiers go by, and you can't do that without somebody seeing. If somebody did that right here, I would be out my window like, what is this guy doing? And that tells me that they know and they don't care. Snipers, same thing. You get snipers in a building, here in downtown San Jose, if somebody starts shooting from the 10th story of a building, everyone's gonna know that that person is there. There's no hiding that. But in Baghdad, it's okay because they're just shooting Americans. Making insurgents, it's easier to do. Not saying like it's a good thing. I'm just saying, like, you come up on a intersection and a guy comes driving at you, and you're telling him to stop the best you can. You're trying to communicate the best you can in a language that you don't speak, and he doesn't stop, so you have to shoot, and you fire. Your whole fire team shoots 50 rounds inside that vehicle, and you see your round goes right into his head, and you come over to the vehicle. He's still alive. Round bounces off his forehead, and you're like, oh, he's just like, I had to go to the hospital. I'm, my mother's in the hospital, and I'm just trying to go. And you're just like, oh fuck, our bad, and then what does that do to a guy? It's like, well, this guy just shot me in the head. I'm just trying to get to the hospital, and take care of my mom. So it doesn't take much from doing that kind of things to where, okay, all right, I'm going to plant this bomb for you. You give me some money, I'll plant this bomb, no problem. Screw these guys. And then boom, just like that. It's an easier progression, in my opinion, to do that kind of stuff. Because a lot of that stuff happens, and it's not anyone's fault. You just have a big language barrier, a big culture barrier, and the communication isn't necessarily there. And it's not like they got used to us being there. It's not like they took a class on how to deal with Americans or how to talk to Americans. It's just like they're there, and now we have to deal with it. So now that level of aggression is higher because you're in a combat zone and you have a gun, and then it's easier to now you're making people hate you, even though you're not trying to. It's not like you're out there murdering people. It's just situation dictates, and combat is chaos. Accidents happen, things that weren't meant to be, and people's lives were changed or ended. And having to have that on your mind and in your soul, it's such a heavy weight. It's something that can drive a normal human being down the road to shoot themselves in the head. And it's happened so many times. Because you're not a murderer, you're not a killer, you're not a sociopath or a psychopath. You're just a guy who's there doing something, and then somebody's life was lost because of a mistake, because of a lack of communication or lack of understanding. And it's so small and so trivial that it maybe could have been totally diverted by just a simple gesture or the way you said something, and you think about that for the rest of your life. You're stuck with that for the rest of your life. This guy died, he was shot, and he was shot because of a miscommunication, and that's it. So you go home, and Saturday night 3 years later, you're sitting in your bedroom with that weight on you because you've destroyed somebody's life, and you don't know how this thought process is going to end, because it's always going to be with you. You're always going to hear that scream. You're always going to hear the screams. You're always going to hear the gunshots, the explosions. There always will be there. And it's a lot to carry. It's a lot of weight. We generally don't talk about what we did unless there was an incident where somebody died, like committed suicide or passed away, or then it gets to serious talk time. And you call your buddy up and say, hey man, are you good? I'm good. Why are you asking? Well, this happened. Oh man, that sucks. Let's talk. It doesn't happen often. It should happen a lot more than it does. There are a few guys that I'll actually call up and be like, hey dude, you remember that time? Remember when I got blown up? And Sarge asked me who my wife's name was, and I told him, and he was like, okay, this guy needs to go to the hospital. But my wife has a very strange first name. So stuff like that, little tidbits of funny stuff. But never we talk about what happened with DuPlantier. Never did we talk about, the injuries that, the hard mental injuries or the hard combat stuff. It's just hasn't been done. I try, because obviously I have a lot of, traumatic experiences, and we all do. I mean, we went to Baghdad thinking that we were going to guard these Connex boxes, and we went into full combat mode. We're taking fire, we're getting blown up, we're watching people die, we're just, we're watching the Iraqi army get blown up. We're doing all this combat stuff, and it's a difficult thing to deal with. So then talking about it later on, people don't want to do it. They want to shut it down, or they don't necessarily pick up the phone and call you and say, hey man, I'm struggling right now. Can you help me out? Which is a bad thing, because after we had our first suicide, I took it upon myself to basically start reaching out to people and be like, hey dude, how you doing? What's going on? How are things? But I don't feel necessarily comfortable bringing up, the things that we saw that were just horrible, because that is a traumatic thing, and people are dealing with it differently. I don't know how everyone's dealing with it. For a while there, I was drinking it out of me. And it took, a lot of hard work internally to get away from that and start dealing with it where I can talk to people, where I can, show my feelings or address the anger, the sadness, and deal with it in a positive way. But that took a lot of work for myself to get to. And I'm not even halfway done. This is just the beginning parts of it. But not everybody's there. Not everybody's dealing with it the same way or dealing with it in a beneficial way to help them progress to closer to some kind of healing, because it's never going to go away. But there becomes a point where you can deal with it and you understand it, and you now recognize that you're mad because of that blast that you heard, and it scared you and it brought you back to Iraq, and now it changed your whole attitude for the rest of the day, and you understand it. So it's easier to deal with that. I think that America doesn't necessarily understand the whole picture of what war does to somebody or what war is. There are probably some inclinations of some idea. Maybe they saw it on TV, or they're watching a special or something, and they get into the PTSD. There's probably some kind of understanding, but I don't think there is a complete understanding of how a person takes what they've done in a war and deals with it on an everyday basis. I know that because people don't understand. My friends that were not combat vets, who were not in the war, who never served in the military, the way they approach me and the way they talk to me. How many people have you killed? Or how many times have you shot somebody? It's like, why would you ask me that? Why would you come at me like that? And I don't blame them, and I don't get angry at them. It's just a lack of understanding of what somebody has to wear, and that weight that sits on their chest, and it's not an understanding. It's hard. It's hard because you're a person who's seen these extraordinary things that most people should not ever have to see. No one should ever have to get blown up. No one should ever have to watch their friends die. No one should ever have to pick up human body parts off the ground and put them in a bag, because that's not normal. And explaining that to somebody is hard, because then you don't want to seem like, okay, this guy's a psycho, who picks up body parts, why? Not understanding that there's a situation where we had to do that, and that kind of thing leads to like the attitude of people just coming at you in a weird way about combat and war, and adds to a lot of aggression, and adds to a lot of sadness, and people not understanding that, dude, I served in combat. I saw people die, and that's a hard thing. Like, why would you ask me how many people I killed? Why is that okay for you to ask that? Because it's not. The weight and the way it makes you feel inside is just, it's hard. And people need to realize that war is eternal. War is never, ever gone. It's a continuous, I will always throughout the rest of my life hear, feel, smell, and have to endure what happened in Baghdad until I'm dead. It's important for me to talk about this so I can tell my story, tell our story, show people what I did, what we did in combat. It also allows for the veterans out there who served to hear and understand that there's people like them out there who think the same way, who feel the same way, and allow them to get the help that they can, maybe, and allow other people to know that they're not alone. And the people who have never known a veteran or have a family member who's a veteran, to hear exactly what it's like and some of the stuff that happens afterwards. And that's important to me, because I go through my everyday life and I run into people who have never even seen a person in uniform. And now I have their attention and they want to know all this stuff. And it's not because they're being an a-hole. It's just because they want to know, because they have no idea. And it's easier to just put it out there and just say, hey, this is my experience. And my experience is different than Bob's experience and Joe's experience and whoever. But this was mine. And here's how I deal with it and how I dealt with it. And hopefully someone catches somebody's ear and they're like, you know what, maybe I should go that route. Maybe I should start looking at self-healing and stop beating myself up because of what happened, and stop, doing this or doing that. And maybe it's time for me to get myself out of that hole.